What we see lately is that more and more Palestinians are inspired by ISIS. This is a new phenomena. It's not the case that other terrorist organizations are not horrible, like Hamas or Islamic Jihad. But this is a new phenomena, and of course we will have to see how we can eliminate or minimize such attacks.
To Israel, a type of attack that we are seeing far too often. A truck rammed through a crowd of people. Authorities are calling this deadly attack terrorism. It happened Sunday in Jerusalem, and there is surveillance video to show you, but we do want to give you a moment here, warn you going into this. This video is disturbing. It shows Israeli soldiers. You see them here getting ready to get on a bus, and then look in the background here, highlighted here, this truck that plowed right through the people there. One officer and 3 cadets died. Israeli police shot and killed the driver of the truck. Our Oren Lieberman picks up the story now.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, visiting the scene of the attack just a few hours after it happened, said there are indications the truck driver in this case, the attacker, was a supporter of ISIS. In the ensuing investigation, police say they've arrested 9 suspects, 5 of whom are family members of the attacker, who police say is a 28-year-old Palestinian from East Jerusalem, from a neighborhood that's quite close to where this attack took place. Police have also increased security in and around the area to try to prevent any copycat attacks. Police say there are no ISIS cells in Israel, but again, it's Netanyahu who's saying this attacker may have been inspired by ISIS. Israel's education minister called this, quote, viral terrorism. That is incitement and inspiration to terrorism that's promoted and propagated on social media. It's been a big effort of Israeli security forces to crack down on social media incitement, not just after this attack, but over the last few months. Meanwhile, Israel gets ready to mourn 4 of its own soldiers killed in this attack, 3 women and 1 man, all in their 20s, as well as a dozen others injured in this attack. Those slain will be posthumously promoted. All of their funerals set to take place on Monday. So let's walk you back through here what happened. It was about 1:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, a beautiful, if somewhat chilly day in Jerusalem, when police say this truck driver drove his truck off the road and onto what was a crowded walkway, heading straight for a group of soldiers, all in their 20s, getting off this bus. Again, that's where police say these 4 soldiers were killed, as well as a dozen others injured. The attacker was shot and killed at the scene. Now the investigation will focus on, where did the truck come from? Was this planned in advance? Did anyone else know about it? That is what police are trying to focus on. Or was this a lone wolf-style attack, which we've seen and police have said is much more difficult to pinpoint for intelligence services and much more difficult to prevent? And yet that will be the challenge, how to spot the next one of these to prevent it before it happens. Oren Lieberman, CNN, Jerusalem.
Oren Lieberman, thank you there. Ahead, next hour, we will talk to a member of the Prime Minister's cabinet. The Israeli energy minister will join us to talk more about the investigation in this attack that has been called terrorism. Welcome back. 4 soldiers killed in Sunday's truck attack in Jerusalem. Funerals will take place Monday. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the truck driver may have been a supporter of ISIS. He's been identified as 28-year-old Fadi Kunbar. He's a Palestinian. Security forces shot and killed Kunbar after his truck plowed into a group of soldiers near a popular tourist spot. Now authorities are trying to determine if this was a lone wolf attack or something more. 9 other people are now under arrest. Joining now from Jerusalem, Israeli energy minister and a member of Israel's security cabinet, Yuval Steinitz, is here with us. It's good to have you with us to talk more about this investigation. What more do you know at this point?
We know that the terrorist who carried out this horrible terrorist attack was recently inspired by ISIS. We have some evidence showing that. But of course, he was also indoctrinated by the Palestinian government media. You know, the main messages in the Palestinian government media is that Jews are horrible creatures that should be exterminated, and Israel should be destroyed. And therefore, incitement, hatred, creates such terrorism here in Jerusalem and also in Europe and in the United States. It's the same phenomena.
Mm-hmm. Well, ISIS at this point has not claimed credit for this attack, though, as you point out, the Prime Minister has stated that he believes this attacker may have been an ISIS sympathizer. Can you elaborate just a bit more on the evidence that you speak of, why this claim is being made now?
No, we don't claim that he was an official member of ISIS. But the fact that he was inspired by ISIS, identified himself with ISIS causes, is very clear. I am not going to share the evidence right now, but it's very clear. Look, what we see all over the Middle East is, and this is the main obstacle for peace and stability in the Middle East, is this Islamic ideology that is shared by ISIS, but also by Hezbollah, by Al-Qaeda, by Hamas, Islamic Jihad. Actually, it boils down to the same ideology. The Jews and also Christians or infidels in general have no right to exist in the Middle East and in Europe and beyond. And we are facing this terrible hatred and terrorism for quite long. Therefore, we are sometimes so frustrated that in the UN Security Council, instead of focusing on incitement and hatred and the general refusal to accept Israel's very existence as a Jewish state, as a tiny, minuscule Jewish democracy, they are targeting Israel once and again, as we saw 3 weeks ago.
The defense minister, though, has stated that this attack was not fueled by settlements. That's certainly a hot-button issue that, is certainly in focus lately. I want to focus in, though, on something that you raise also, the question whether it's ISIS-inspired or ISIS-directed, and this concept of basically the information that's put out there, viral terrorism. How is the government dealing with that, trying to crack down on that, whether it's inspired or directed online?
I don't know if it was directed, but it seems quite evident that it was inspired by ISIS. Inspired by ISIS, but again, you cannot separate. He was inspired recently by ISIS, but since Palestinian children from kindergarten are totally exposed to the Palestinian media, including children media, and to the messages that Jews are horrible creatures, that terrorists are heroes, and Jews must die, you cannot really separate. What we see lately is that more and more Palestinians are inspired by ISIS. This is a new phenomena. It's not the case that other terrorist organizations are not horrible, like Hamas or Islamic Jihad. But this is a new phenomena, and of course we will have to see how we can eliminate or minimize such attacks. Generally speaking, we are very experienced. We have very good intelligence services. Usually, we manage to detect and to prevent in advance, to intercept, even sometimes lone wolves in advance. But despite our experience, we don't have 100% success. And yesterday, these horrible terrorist attacks on young Israelis, on young soldiers in Jerusalem is another testimony that hatred and incitement and terrorism exist here in Israel, in Jerusalem, exactly like it's happened with the same tactic of using trucks to drive into the crowd in Berlin or in Nice or elsewhere. And the final conclusion should be that we have all the world to unite to fight and defeat terrorism and Islamic zealots, because they are threatening not just Jews, but Christians, Yazidis, Kurds, everybody, anybody that is not devoted Muslim according to their interpretation.
And you point out, we have seen these terrible attacks, these trucks driven through crowds of people far too often. Yuval Steinitz, the Israeli energy minister, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insight on this investigation. Again, funerals are set for Monday.